Did you see how the moon is rusting?
Still, like, this is
Joel
crazy.
2, 31 through 32, verses 31 through 32.
Okay.
Being a Christian, the Bible tells us that we will reach a point, and Paul says it in Acts and Romans and different places. He tells us that we will reach a point where bitter is seen as sweet, dark is seen as light, and evil is seen as moral.
And the gateway process confirms this, that the gateway process is true. Our consciousness is infinite, and when we die, our energy returns to the absolute. Now, I'm not religious, but this sounds a lot like heaven and God.
The 21st chapter of Luke's Gospel is about the return of Jesus Christ. In fact, it is our Lord's own words regarding his return. He had much to say about the second coming.
Some very strange things are happening in the world around us. Let's take a look at 3 stories that have been going viral and that are actually kind of spooky, how they might relate to biblical prophecies and end times, and then make some concluding thoughts about what all of this might mean.
Did you see how the moon is rusting?
These men from the popular YouTube channel Sunday Cool Teas are talking about a phenomenon on the moon that puzzled scientists when it was discovered, which was that rust was discovered on the moon.
I've heard about it.
Yeah. So there's this kid that took like the most, what
Super high quality.
the most high quality picture of the moon ever taken. And it was like over like 2,000 images that he combined of like taking pictures of the moon. And you can clearly see that the moon is rusting.
Okay.
The reason why discovering rust on the moon is a big deal is that although a form of water has been discovered on the moon before, rust also requires oxygen to form, and the moon is airless. So theoretically, rust should not be able to form on the moon.
And then I saw this on NASA on their website, and the article said, while the moon is airless, research indicates the presence of hematite, a form of rust that normally requires oxygen and water. This has scientists puzzled.
Keep in mind this word hematite, because we're going to talk a lot more about this word and how people are connecting it to the Bible and prophecies in the Bible. The prefix hema comes from a Greek word that has the meaning blood, and a lot of people are connecting the presence of hematite on the moon to scripture passages like Joel chapter 2.
Do you know what the word hematite?
Helium.
No.
Hematite is a name that is derived from the Greek word meaning blood.
Like hemoglobin.
So we're going to go a little callback
Yeah.
to the Bible.
All right.
This is in Joel.
I'm going to act like I know where you're going with this. I'm still like, this is
Joel
crazy.
2, 31 through 32, verses 31 through 32.
Okay.
It says, "The sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes. And it shall come to pass that everyone who calls in the name of the Lord shall be saved. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there shall be those who escape, as the Lord has said, and among the survivors shall be those whom the Lord calls."
I'll share more about what I personally think about all of this at the end of the video, but for now, I'll just summarize what's going on. Joel chapter 2 verse 31 says, "The sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes." So some Christians are saying, hey look, there's hematite on the moon, and hema means blood, so maybe this is a fulfillment of the moon turning to blood, so maybe this means Jesus is coming back soon. It's an interesting theory. Let's just keep going for now.
That's weird. That's weird. So what is is that type of thing on our Earth? So we know it on Earth, right? That's the same like chemical or whatever that is.
Yeah. So it's observed on Earth. Okay. But the term hematite, this it's a type of whatever rusting that only occurs with this certain mineral, water and oxygen. But the moon is literally doing that right now, and scientists do not know why.
It does seem pretty weird that the moon would be rusting when one of the key components of rusting, oxygen, is missing from the moon. This is leading some Christians to believe that maybe God is causing the rusting to fulfill the prophecy about the moon turning to blood. However, there is another possible explanation for why the moon might be rusting, one that is natural instead of supernatural. Here's part of a video from the channel SciShow explaining how the Earth could be causing the rusting on the moon.
But it turns out the Earth is forcing chemical reactions to happen on the lunar surface. Our planet is making the moon rust.
The moon is really far away from the Earth, so the question is how the Earth could be causing something like that on the moon. Let's keep watching to learn one possible explanation.
But this lunar rust is actually a mineral that goes by the name hematite. And when hematite was discovered on the moon back in 2020, it caused a big stir. For one thing, hematite typically forms when a bunch of metallic iron comes into contact with liquid water and oxygen gas, neither of which, you may have noticed, the moon has in significant quantities.
Again, what we're hearing is that hematite requires water and oxygen, which the moon doesn't really seem to have. So the question is, how in the world is hematite being formed on the moon? This guy explains that it makes perfect sense to believe that it's actually the Earth that's causing the rust on the moon.
The Earth is reaching out through the not quite void of space and providing both a source of oxygen and a temporary safe haven to build up some of that hematite. You see, the magnetic field that protects our planet isn't a perfect sphere. As the solar wind runs into it, it gets deformed into a sort of windsock cone shape. And that long tail, the magnetotail, stretches all the way to the moon. So roughly every month for 5 whole days, the moon passes through it. And while it shields the moon from the solar wind, the magnetotail also flings charged particles from the Earth's upper atmosphere toward the lunar surface.
So there's a scientific explanation for how there could be rust on the moon, despite scientists being puzzled by this phenomenon for quite a long time. Does the existence of a scientific explanation for the rust on the moon necessarily mean it's not something supernatural that relates to the end times prophecy in Joel chapter 2? Not necessarily, but let's just keep going for now.
And think about when Joel was written too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's weird, man.
Yeah.
For those of us who don't know, our viewers, do you want to give a little bit of the Joel? When was Joel written?
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. It had to have been, I mean, like this is
Old Testament.
This is, BC. So I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I was testing you.
I failed.
They seem to be saying that it's pretty amazing that the book of Joel, which was written thousands of years ago during the Old Testament, could have predicted something like hematite appearing on the moon. We still need to consider the question of whether hematite and rust on the moon really has anything to do with the prophecy of the moon turning to blood or not, but let's keep going for now.
But no, I mean, it's throughout scripture of just like the moon turning to blood and like, what does that mean? Because they have like the blood moon, right? And people are like, oh, that's going to happen on this day. But the word, so like the Bible, it was ultimately translated into Greek at one point, right? And the Greek word for blood is hematite, and which is the same word that they use for this rust.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
why?
The moon is literally has hematite on it, which is the rust. Hematite means blood. And it's just like,
yeah,
that's weird.
And really quickly, if you want to support this channel and help spread biblical truth to more people, I would be so grateful if you would click that subscribe button. So they're saying that the Greek word for blood is hematite, and we're now discovering hematite on the moon, which could possibly mean that in some sense the moon is turning to blood, which would maybe be a fulfillment of the biblical prophecy in Joel chapter 2. What does all of this mean? Well, some says this means it could be a sign that Jesus is returning soon, and that's what these men talk about next.
Here it comes, baby. It's all gonna end soon, so you better.
End times is coming, my friends. Is that true? I mean, like, I don't know. That's the tough thing. That's
okay. I mean, there's been, I've thought about this a lot of just like throughout history, like really terrible things have happened. Like, could you imagine like World War II, like all the devastating things that were happening? You're like, dude, the end is near.
Yeah.
The end is near.
They bring up the point that there have been so many times in history when many people and many Christians were so confident that the signs of the times were pointing towards Jesus returning very soon, such as World War II and other catastrophic world events. However, we look back now and know that all of those predictions about Jesus returning soon because of these major world events were just wrong. But is there something different about the moon rusting? Do we finally have a sign that might actually point to Jesus returning very soon? These men are open to that possibility. Watch this.
Yeah.
It just feels it feels a little different this time.
It definitely does, because I mean, do you think just about the advances in the technology to now, and like just the amount of just trouble that's in this world, like absolute just like mayhem.
Yeah.
And it's just getting worse, and it's I don't know.
Yeah. So
it's hard to see like how could it get crazier.
They're saying that we live in times that are unprecedented, that things seem to be getting worse and worse at an exponential rate, and that certainly civilization can't support this kind of insanity for very much longer. And there is at least some element of truth to what they are saying.
You know, I tell you one thing, we're in trouble.
I got that.
I know that. I know that. I know that we're in trouble. I know that there are things happening in the midst of our society that, you know, if you look at Romans chapter 1, or if you look at history, these are the kind of things that happen toward the end of a society's lifespan, if you will. And I think unless things change dramatically, that what we're going to see is going to be catastrophic.
Coincidentally or not coincidentally, this is pretty much the same point that we're going to see in the next story we cover, which is a very interesting conversation about end times and prophecies between Joe Rogan and Riley Gaines. We're now seeing places like Hollywood openly celebrating and promoting Satan and devil worship.
I just feel like we're in competition right now because they are trying to normalize the devil. They are trying to the devil is on the main stage at award shows and in every video and signs and symbols.
Rihanna is slammed for her Bold magazine cover, where she's dressed as a nun, and it's causing quite the stir. People are saying it's not right to mix religious outfits with pop culture, calling it disrespectful. The cover has drawn comments like not okay and crossing the line.
Thank you to Satan for giving me inspiration on how to play this role.
When we see this kind of blasphemy all around us in the culture, it can be easy to wonder how much longer a civilization that celebrates this kind of behavior can last before collapsing under the weight of its own evil and depravity. There's definitely reason to be alarmed, even deeply alarmed, by the immense evil that we are witnessing around us. One question we should be asking is, just how alarmed should we be? Should we be as alarmed as this man is?
But my entire life, I've always just known that I'm never going to be an old man.
That is super.
Not that I'm gonna.
Don't say that.
No, but like that, something's like Jesus is gonna come back before like I become an old man.
A lot of people today are believing things like this more and more. That Jesus is not only coming back very soon, but will very likely come back even before they die. Is there a good biblical reason to believe this, or is this just people making wild guesses? We'll talk more about this question later.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine if that's your belief. But you're like, I'm gonna die before I become an old man,
dude. Because I'm telling you that time period in high school where I was having these like crazy dreams, dude. I had one where Jesus came back and like there's trumpets and like the sky just went poof, like light.
Yeah.
I'm like, he's coming back. And so like when I woke up, I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna be an old man.
So one reason why he is saying so strongly that Jesus will be coming back before he dies is because he had a dream about Jesus coming back. And I'm sure lots of people have stories just like this. Lots of people talk a lot about their dreams and how God is revealing to them things about end times and Jesus' second coming. Should we be taking these dreams seriously? Is there legitimacy to them? I'll share some of my own thoughts later, but let's finish up watching this segment of their conversation for now.
That is scary. This is such a.
I told you it's gonna be a
little morbid, but
it'll be heavy.
It's like we are all gonna be at that point in our life where we face that, and so it's like it's a hard thing to, I don't know, just pass over, like, or don't talk about, or just like not even notice the significance of it. But it's
I by no means am calling you a prophet in this, but in that same
don't call me that.
I'm not. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, let's just be clear, this is just fun, but you go a few verses up and that's where you get the your old men shall dream dreams and your young men shall see visions. And then the outline of that usage in the original language is like an oracle or a prophecy.
The Bible does say, your old men shall dream dreams and your young men shall see visions. Could this Bible prophecy be referring to people like this man having a dream about Jesus returning before he dies? Or to all the other people who say God is revealing to them special information about the end times via dreams and other visions? I'll share my own opinion a little later. But first, let's go to the next story, which is a very interesting exchange between Joe Rogan and Riley Gaines about several things related to Christianity, the Bible, and end times. First, we'll see Joe talking about one of the absolutely insane things happening in our culture today that seems to suggest that Western civilization is in a downward spiral and self-destruction.
And it's always been morally reprehensible. It's always been a thing that we wanted to kill people for. And now all of a sudden we're saying that it's an identity. Again, if I was trying to destroy a country, I would throw that into the educational system. And I'd make it seem virtuous to discuss this in an open-minded and objective way. Like they can't help who they identify with.
And the winner is Dylan Mulvaney.
Oh my God. You know, I'm really shocked because I thought the only award I would ever maybe win was maybe a Tony Award, but now I'm a musical theater gal with a dreamy.
Now here's Riley Gaines, a championship swimmer who competed against Leah Thomas, talking about a biblical prophecy that she believes is being fulfilled today.
Well, and honestly, right, like, again, being a Christian, the Bible tells us that we will reach a point, and Paul says it in Acts and Romans and different places. He tells us that we will reach a point where bitter is seen as sweet, dark is seen as light, and evil is seen as moral. It's undeniable that that's not what we're seeing now.
Riley brings up a pretty good point about what we're seeing in Western cultures today. We're living in pretty unique times where sin is being openly celebrated as good and righteousness is being attacked as evil. Cosmopolitan magazine went so far as to promote a satanic abortion ritual, which refers to a ritual advocated by the Satanic Temple. And more states are letting violent criminals go free.
New video is sparking even more outrage over the group of migrants accused of attacking 2 New York City police officers. That's what you're looking at on the left hand of your screen. Those guys were freed without bail. And now look at this. Here's one suspect flipping the bird to the cameras. He could care less. Another blows kisses as he smiles and laughs. The other suspect next to him also putting up the middle fingers and cursing at those reporters. Remorseless, brazen, smug.
But not only this, at the same time, the FBI is punishing people who non-violently protest the ending of preborn life with extreme prison sentences to make an example of them.
So the FBI has rounded up 11 or 12 people now. One of them is like an 84-year-old grandmother who was praying at the entrance of an abortion clinic. At the time, the abortion clinic came and told them they had to go. Some of them were hit with a misdemeanor for trespassing, I think, and it was over. 2 years ago, the DOJ has started opening up cases now of those misdemeanors that were just misdemeanor and dismissed, and they are now charging them with a FACE Act, which is blocking the entrance, and they are facing 11 years.
Wow.
Our government is completely out of control.
Wow.
We're definitely living in very evil times. And this depth of evil that we're seeing in Western cultures all around the world today is leading many people, such as Riley Gaines, to see parallels to some of what the Bible predicts will happen in the last days.
And look, that's not to say that people who identify as trans are evil. I don't necessarily think that. But what is evil is deception. Manipulation is evil. Temptation is evil. Lying and affirming delusions, that's evil. And that's exactly how Satan works and how he operates, is in the darkness.
It's really interesting that Riley is speaking so openly about the Bible and about Satan on Joe Rogan's show, because Joe used to be someone who could not stand people talking about the Bible.
The whole thing's so stupid. Just stop and think how f***ing stupid that is. Christianity, at the end of the day, with no proof, everything is mythology. Everything. With no proof. With proof, then you examine the proof. It's super simple. And anybody that argues against that is just, you're just biased. You have your own ideas. If you have some proof that there was a God, that this God had one son, and he made this son come down and get the beat out of him and nailed to a board so that we could all have no sin. Can you show me some studies? Do you have a box of evidence that you can pull out and we can examine all the different pieces that points to the undeniable conclusion that that's true? Because if you don't, then it's a myth. Then you're believing mythology.
But more recently, I think because of all the craziness that he is seeing in the world around him, even Joe Rogan has now been more open to considering the importance of God in the midst of the battles happening in the culture. And he has had many deep conversations with numerous people who say they are Christians regarding spiritual topics.
But now a lot of it is coming to light again, thanks to people like Elon Musk.
It sounds loony when we start having these kind of conversations about like Satan and evil and good and, and biblical stories. But as time goes on, I think that what the Bible is I think at one point in time, there was a very sophisticated society that got wiped out by some sort of a massive natural disaster.
Okay, so Joe goes into a pretty wild theory that has absolutely no evidence to back it up. But what's very interesting is that our culture has reached a level of insanity where even someone like Joe Rogan is reconsidering his original views of the Bible and of what the Bible has to say about the things that are happening in the world.
Like that they were trying to tell us, and that men can go down evil, wicked ways, and it can lead to destruction. And these are some of the symptoms that you'll see when it leads to destruction.
Again, it's so fascinating that even Joe is finding truth in some of the prophecies in the Bible about the evil things that are going to happen during the last days. We are living in truly unprecedented times when the depth of the evil that we see around us is leading people like Joe Rogan to say things like this, and even renowned atheist Richard Dawkins to say something like this about Christianity.
Well, I must say I was slightly horrified to hear that Ramadan is being promoted instead. I do think that we are culturally a Christian country. I call myself a cultural Christian. I'm not a believer, but there's a distinction between being a believing Christian and being a cultural Christian. And so, I love hymns and Christmas carols.
Well, there's still stuff that hasn't yet, right? What has been prophesied that hasn't yet happened. So time will tell, right? I think his return is past due.
Like Dr. Manhattan.
Riley says she thinks that Jesus' return is past due, similar to what we heard the man say earlier about believing that Jesus would return very soon, maybe even before he died. Is there an element of truth to what they're saying, or are they just saying nonsense regarding thinking they know anything about when Jesus will actually return? Again, I'll share my thoughts about this a little later. Let's move on to the next story, which is about the CIA Gateway report that some people are actually saying is an evidence for the existence of God. I'll explain more about the CIA Gateway report later, but take a look at this.
The conclusion I'm surprised people haven't reached from this, which the ancients all believed, is that if consciousness creates reality, that means there must be a perceiver to the universe. But what this has done is prove the existence of God. If someone has to perceive the universe even before life, that means God is perceived. And this is the argument the ancients used to justify the existence of God.
So what is this CIA Gateway report that could prove the existence of God? The CIA Gateway report, officially titled Analysis and Assessment of the Gateway Process, is a declassified document from 1983 that explores the potential of human consciousness to transcend time and space. The report delves into various techniques like hypnosis, biofeedback, and transcendental meditation, aiming to achieve altered states of awareness. These methods were examined for their potential to enhance human mental functions and possibly even to enable time travel or out-of-body experiences.
People have been pressuring the CIA for the missing page. FOIA requests have been made. Petitions have been created, all trying to get the CIA to release page 25. The CIA insisted they don't have it. But in 2021, Vice published an article about the Gateway document and mentioned the controversy around the missing page. A few days later, the Monroe Institute released the complete report, including the mysterious page 25.
The document was part of the CIA's exploration into mind control and hypnosis, which extended into broader investigations of the mind's potential. It provides a detailed scientific framework on how these altered states could be achieved and the possible applications of such states in various fields. The report suggests that through specific mental techniques, individuals might access intuitive knowledge and manipulate both their consciousness and physical reality.
But the gist is this. McDonald says that no matter what religion or culture you're born into, the Gateway process could be a valuable tool, if not the most valuable tool ever designed to help a person truly understand themselves and the nature of the universe itself.
The declassification of the report has spurred interest and speculation online, with many intrigued by its implications for both science and the paranormal. The Gateway process was seen not just as a tool for personal growth and self-discovery, but also as a potentially transformative technology for understanding and expanding human consciousness. Many people, even non-Christians, are connecting this Gateway report with the concept of God and heaven.
That the Gateway process is true. Our consciousness is infinite, and when we die, our energy returns to the absolute. Now, I'm not religious, but this sounds a lot like heaven and God. Now, maybe not a man in the sky with a boomy voice and a white beard, but God in the sense that we all come from the same source. So in a way, the Gateway process could prove the existence of God or the afterlife.
Okay, now we get to the point where I share my thoughts about all of this. There are certainly lots of things happening in the world around us that seem very, very strange, even almost paranormal. For example, this Gateway report. It can be really easy to get distracted by crazy theories that the Bible really doesn't speak about at all. And I think a lot of times people are trying too hard to match events that are happening in the world to the Bible in a one-to-one manner. These theories may be interesting to think about, but we shouldn't put our confidence in them. Instead, I think that we as Christians should be focused on what the Bible speaks clearly about. The Bible teaches that no one knows when Jesus will return. We should continue to proclaim the gospel and work to gain ground for the kingdom of God. And I don't know about you, but that's what I'm going to focus on.
If we're not careful, we look to this battle of Armageddon and we're watching the newspaper and we're watching what happens in the Middle East and trying to figure out what's going on with Syria, what's going on with Iraq, what's going on with China, what's going on with Russia, what's going on with Saudi Arabia, what's going on with Egypt, what's going on with fill in the blank. And while we're looking at it, this war is going on right under our noses.
Hi, my name is Mike. I'm a deacon, a husband, a father, a software engineer, and an amateur maker of videos. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to help me in my mission to spread biblical truth, just subscribe and watch these videos until the end, which will help the YouTube algorithm recommend these videos to more people. I'm committed to using the skills and gifts God has given me to glorify Him and communicate biblical truth, and I would be so grateful if you would come be a part of what I'm building. You can visit my website at joyfulexile.com to learn more about me and what I'm working on. I hope you're having a blessed day. I will see you in the next video, and remember, this world is not our home.